No to pocznę.
Głosujesz? Tak.
Mermaid.
Dear colleagues, so we are starting for today with our next lecturer, Professor Baev, who is from National Defense Academy of Bulgaria, a prominent professor and lecturer also at the Diplomatic Institute with rich experience behind him in history, because he is a historian as a profession, but he works for many years at the Defense Academy. And so he is speaking about the accession of the countries of the Southeastern Europe in the Nato, and not only. So I just give him the floor, and so as usual, he will be very active, I suppose, at the end of his presentation. So Professor Baev, you have the floor.
Can you see me? Oh, I don't want to. Just want to be in the same row with participants. Thank you for coming to Bulgaria, and thanks to our hosts from Naval Academy, from Diplomatic Institute. About 10 years ago, we started together with Diplomatic Institute an interdisciplinary course of defense diplomacy. And for reference of Mrs. Mikhailova, I'd like just to mention that 3 months ago, when I revealed newly declassified documents from a Bulgarian military intelligence service, the first course in Bulgaria on defense diplomacy was in mid-70s, actually. Together with foreign and defense ministries, regarding the Conference for Security and Cooperation in Europe. They needed such kind of qualified officers to serve as experts in the conference in Geneva and Helsinki. So we have a little bit traditions in this defense diplomacy, but actually in the early 90s, we had a new challenge and started in the process of joining NATO and European Union, started to learn more about such other interdisciplinary tool like civil-military relations, which is part of what we shall speak about today. Well, what I want to give you as information today is just one summarized review about the evolutionary process of accession to NATO of countries of Eastern and Southeastern Europe, in particular in the Balkans. So different stages, procedures. Probably we will have not enough time to speak about everything, but I will suggest to you just a few main topics to discuss in these 2 hours. First of all, about the dual process of NATO transformation and enlargement. This is the main challenge to NATO starting from 1991, to end of the Cold War, of course. And the beginning of NATO missions, NATO presence in the Southeast Europe since early 90s. Then, of course, the basic points about the process of NATO enlargement and the mechanisms and procedures in different stages of NATO succession instruments and tools like PARP, IPAC, MEP, and so on. Probably I'll give you some information as well about the defense and security sector reforms in Southeast European countries, and a comparative analysis of defense transformation of these countries in the process joining NATO. And at the end, what I want to share with you is some experience of one of the leading tools in the process of accession to NATO in the field of training and education countries of Eastern and Southeast European countries, using the NATO instruments for so-called science for peace and security of NATO policy. Because you know what I offer to you are very broader, much more broader aspects of this issue. I would like to summarize some of my remarks using two of my papers on this subject. So also, if we are thinking about the beginning of this process, it is very interesting currently to discuss the process of a radical shift from east to west in the policy of Eastern and Southeastern countries, which happened exactly in 2-3 years term in the beginning of the 90s, and also the transformation of the world order and the world modeling international relations from bipolar to unipolar to multipolar world, and as European Union expert says currently, polycentric world. This is the shape. And also you have to bear in mind that the process of transformation and enlargement of NATO was in parallel with the same process of the European Union, which in some way made some troubles in the relationship between these international organizations. Having also in mind that until 1999, until Amsterdam Treaty, we had also the transformation of West European Union as a military tool of European integration. So the mixed processes of transformation provoked, of course, new challenges to European integration as a whole. The key factors of the radical transformation of the alliance, of the Atlantic Alliance, was the policy of the outstretched hand, with a clear determination for cooperation with former adversaries in Eastern Europe. And as a result, you know that only for 2 decades we have 30% of the NATO member states were from the former Warsaw Pact Treaty organization. Just for 1-2 decades, such a radical transformation was done in the 2 parts of Europe. This process was of extremely significance for the integration of the 2 divided for half a century parts of Europe, and at the same time, precondition for assuring better stability and security inside the whole Euro-Atlantic area. Actually, at the end of the Cold War, some media and some experts asked the question, do we need, in the new circumstances, in the new conditions, do we need exactly NATO? Because NATO was established in 1949, as you know, as an organization for collective security and defense against the Eastern Bloc and after the end of the Cold War, some of the reasons for existing of NATO probably were losing somewhere. That's why when we are speaking about the enlargement of NATO and the accession of Eastern European and Southeastern European countries to NATO, it actually gave a new impetus, new stimulus for the reorganization and transformation of NATO itself. The new missions and the new goals and aims of NATO, which transformed itself from organization of collective defense to global peacemaker and organization for cooperative security in Europe and in the world. The first steps, of course, were with adopting in November 1991 new strategic doctrine of NATO, the so-called Rome Doctrine, where exactly for the first time it was offered to East European countries, former Warsaw Pact countries, to be part of a new cooperative security community in Europe. And exactly just 1 month later, in December 1991, the North Atlantic Cooperation Council was established. And as described by Secretary General of NATO, Manfred Björner, just 3 months later happened two extremely new and shocking events in the history of Europe. First meetings of ministers of defense and chiefs of staffs of both NATO and former Warsaw Pact countries. Thus start the dialogue and the process of faster and evolutionary accession of the East European countries to NATO. Then, of course, the main step was establishment in January 1994, the new initiative, Partnership for Peace initiative, and in May 1997, the Euro-Atlantic Cooperative Council. And inside those initiatives, a new tools and instruments for the accession process were invented ad hoc and step by step in the next couple of years. Next step was, of course, the question about East European countries' invitation to join NATO, because this was the main precondition for each country who desire to be a member of North Atlantic Alliance, to be invited, of course. Probably from the point of history, it is paradoxical and ironic that the first East European country who officially voiced its desire to join NATO, well, you know who was this country. It was in December 1991. Russia, President Eltsin. Of course, it was a propagandic measure, but and nothing happened. The next country, after the downfall of the regime of Rabisalia in Albania in mid-1992, new Albanian leader, Sali Berisha, also voiced to join NATO. But it was not the procedure. The mechanism of accession and inclusion to NATO was quite different. It needed some kind of a consensus between all member states to invite the new ones. Speaking about the initial discussions in the early 90s, there were some obstacles and also some difficulties to decide how to start and did really NATO needs to be enlarged. I'll give you just let me see few of these reasons which some of Western countries started to put on the agenda against the accession of NATO. About 5-6 different reasons. In the period of 1992-1994, before the decision of the NATO Council to start such kind of process. The first such obstacle, reason, was that enlargement to the east should approach NATO close to the borders with Russia, which could cause eventual tensions. It was the position of France and Germany in the beginning. Second, the integration of countries in a process of transition to democracy would hamper the effective use of the principle of consensus in decision-making. Third, the lack of sufficient resources, finances, and interoperability with the Western weapon systems would be a burden for NATO member states. Fourth reason, the existing political instability and ethnic national conflicts in the candidate states would cause new risks and threats for the security of the allied countries. And 5, Central European countries, namely Hungary, Poland, and Czechoslovakia in the beginning, Czech and Slovak republics, meet not any immediate threat for their own security and thus do not need an urgent accession to the North Atlantic Organization. However, in 1994, finally, after a broader consultation process, the NATO countries decided to start the process of accession of the, first of all, Central European countries, and then moved to the next East European countries. In October 1994, US Senate approved NATO Participation Act, which opened a long-term perspective for Central European countries to be admitted into the alliance. Then, at the end of 1994, NATO Council decided to start a broader comprehensive study regarding the further enlargement of NATO, and also to determine the main criteria for these applicants to join NATO. In September 1995, a study of NATO enlargement was adopted by NATO Council. In this study, some basic criteria were formulated. Among them, existence of democratic legal system, resolution of the ethnic and territorial splits within neighboring countries, democratic and civilian control over the armed forces, achievement of standardization with NATO countries in security sector, And one more condition, active participation in PFP, Partnership for Peace activities. NATO enlargement was designed as and considered as a gradual and evolutionary process, also transparent process, which requires unanimous agreement among the member states when they decide to deliver invitation to an applicant country. Further, in the next years, the initial criteria were supplemented with new political, economical, and legal requirements in the spirit of the so-called Copenhagen criteria of the European Union, which means democratic governance, observation of human and minority rights, working market economy, state institution stability, and so on. About 15 years ago, in some of my papers, I had a comparative analysis of the first and next NATO enlargement in Europe. You know, the first enlargement was in the Balkans in 1951, 1952, when Greece and Turkey joined the alliance. So if we compare the criteria from the 1950s to those criteria of mid-1990s, you can see quite differences. Of course, the first NATO enlargement in Europe in 1952 was by geopolitical reasons, basically, because in that period, at the end of 40s and early 90s, early 50s, you know, neither Turkey nor Greece were societies, fully democratic societies with developed infrastructure and economic, and even in the late 1950s and early 1960s, there were some conclusions by US and British advisors in Greece and Turkey that still they had no fully interoperability with the Western arms. So this was the process of 10 to 15 years. While in the mid-90s, the new countries of Central and Eastern Europe had much more defined, clearly defined criteria for democracy, for economic and infrastructural resources, for legal system, for interoperability with weapons and your service, training, and so on. Besides the issues of the political experience of the enlargement to east direction, another dilemma appeared as well about the financial and material resources of the process of enlargement. If you look, they are available online. If you look at the US Senate Commission of Foreign Relations records, you can see 3 or 4 studies about this particular issue of financial forecasting of financial resources of further NATO enlargement. In February 1999, White House in Washington requested a prospective foresight study about the price of the enlargement for the period of next 10 years. According to the experts, that process should cost to the member states about 30 to 35 billion US dollars. The US sharing, in particular, could be not more than $2 billion, which means 150 million annually, yearly. And actually, it is 0.1% of the US GDP. However, the Western politics thought in this time that it is a very large burden to their economies, share $30 billion. If I'm going further to the results of this enlargement, actually, when the first 3 Central European countries joined NATO in 1999, the financial resources which spent Western countries in this process of accession of Hungary, Poland, and Czech Republic was about 1.5 billion US dollars. And for the next 7 countries of Eastern Europe in 2004, more $2.5 billion. So we spoke at the end of the 90s about 30 billion US dollars, but actually this process of accession cost to Western countries, to NATO, top NATO countries, about $4 to $5 billion, about 10 to 15% of the forecasts analysis. In the period from NATO summit in Madrid in 1997, when the first 3 Central European countries were invited to join NATO, till the summit in Prague, the Czech Republic, in 2002, when 7 other East European countries have been invited, the immediate instruments in the accession process were qualified and perfected according to Article 10 of the Washington Treaty of April 1949. These new instruments were added to the initially basic elements of the so-called PARP, Partnership for Peace, Planning and Review process, which envisaged 4 level 2-year cycles with ministerial directives, partnership goals, estimates, and consolidation evaluation reports. The most important initial instrument was so-called IPAP, Individual Partnership for Peace Action Plans. In November 1995, the first joint conference of NATO national armament directors responsible for defense procurement was convoked in Brussels. It approved a proposal to grant more than 500 normative documents and about 100 NATO standards, so-called STANAG standards, to partners of PFP countries on 33 agreed areas for cooperation. Within the framework of the East Euro-Atlantic Cooperation Council began to function as well Joint Information System for Data Exchange, so-called ePrime. The next step was made during the NATO summit in Washington in April 1999, with the new NATO Membership Action Plan, so-called MEP. It comprises of 5 chapters. The first chapter concerns political and economic issues, then defense policy, resource issues, security, and legal problems. In 2005, a new comprehensive review discussed the results of Partnership for Peace and Euro-Atlantic Cooperation Council cooperation. The Joint Information System, EPRIME, published electronic catalog with more than 2,000 activities of cooperation between NATO and 50 countries. 2 other new integrated tools were introduced too. The Partnership for Peace Training and Education Enhancement Program, so-called PEEP, was designed to help improve interoperability and to promote greater cooperation and dialogue among the wider defense and security communities in NATO and partner countries, thus ensuring the best use of human and other resources. 9 elite and partner nations providing PFP training centers in this period, most of whom focused on operational and tactical levels training and instruction. And also the second instrument of this process was so-called PMF, Political and Military Framework, which sets out governing principles, procedures, modality, and other guidance for partner involvement in political consultations and the decision process in both operating planning and command arrangement in NATO-led operations. Next stage was the invitation of partner countries to join NATO-led operations, other missions and activities at the end of the 90s and early 21st century. The lessons learned from the first wave of accession was considered during the incorporation of the next 7 East European countries. In the same way, by the way, in the first decade of 21st century, the lessons learned from accession of, for instance, Romania and Bulgaria were applied for the next countries in the Western Balkans in their process of accession to NATO. I have some data about the experience of Bulgaria and Romania, comparative experience of Bulgaria and Romania, but probably if you have some questions later on, I'll discuss it. So just skip this particular issue. Speaking also about the process of enlargement, of course, and the process of transformation of NATO, of course, we have to at least to mention the significant role of NATO presence and NATO role in the Balkans in the mid-90s. Probably some of you know one of the former spokesperson of NATO and Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy, Jamie Shee. During the Kosovo Air Force operation, he was every day on the TV with briefing. So I would suggest to some of you who are interested in this process of NATO transformation to look. There is available online 5 distant learning lectures of Jamie Shee about NATO transformation. I believe that it is put it on NATO's website. And about 10 years ago, he mentioned, I'll quote his words, if it was true that the old NATO was very much the child of the Cold War, it's also true that the new NATO is very much the child of the Balkans. Of course, because the new missions of NATO started exactly in this region of Southeast Europe and the Balkans. The first in NATO history multinational mission was in Bosnia and Herzegovina, IFOR and SFOR, as you know. For the first time after signing the Washington Treaty in April 1949, about a half a century later, NATO used for the first time their forces during the armed conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina in February 1994. For the first time in history, NATO undertook armed actions outside its zone of responsibility, which determined new doctrinal redefinitions and concepts like crisis management or non-Article 5 concept, exactly when was established IFOR and SFOR NATO-led missions. And then KFOR, and then in other Balkan states, some kind of NATO-led missions. So this was a significant part of motivation for NATO transformation to global peacemaker in the next 2 decades. I'll not speaking more about this, but this is very important to know that the Balkans were exactly a stimulating factor of NATO transformation. So, when in April 1999, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, and 4 other East European countries adopted their first individual membership action plans, MAP. Thus started the process of accession to NATO in our region, in Southeast Europe. In October 1999, Bulgarian government presented to Brussels its first working program on implementation of MEP, while in October 2000, the second annual program of that during discussion, it was made available during discussions in US Congress at the time of ratification of the agreements for inclusion of East European countries to NATO. And the data was the public opinion in Bulgaria in this period, at the beginning of 2002 and 2003. The public opinion in Bulgaria approved with 62% its inclusion to NATO. In Slovenia, with 66%, while in Romania, with 75%. In comparison, when two other Balkan states applied for joining NATO at the eve of NATO summit in Bucharest in 2008, the US Congress was informed that about 50% of the public opinion in Croatia was in favor of joining the alliance, while in Albania it was more than 90%. The public opinion in Fyrom was in similar mode as Albania, 40% in this period. The process of inclusion of the 7 East European countries during the Prague summit in November 2002 finished on 29th of March 2004 after the ratification of the documents by all NATO country states. In this period, the last 2 annual programs of MAP individual membership action plan were accomplished in the 5 main areas, as I told you before. The question of integration of Croatia into the Euro-Atlantic structures was postponed with several years due to some nationalistic policy and lack of visible reforms in security and defense sector, civil-military relations in general, during the rule of President Franjo Tudjman. I suppose that there are some people from Croatia here in now. In 2003, in Amsterdam, there were published a very good report of about 150 pages about this painful process of democratic process in Croatia at the time of President Tudjman and later on. So it is also available online. Only after the parliamentary elections in 2000, the accelerated process of Croatia inclusion to Partnership for Peace started. In 2001, the Croatian government adopted individual Partnership for Peace action plan with 160 activities, while in the next year, 2002, the country took part in more than 200 various activities in the spirit of PFP. In May 2002, Croatia joined the other East European countries, which received individual MAP, Membership Action Plan. Unlike Albania and Fyrom, which established contacts with NATO staffs in their capitals, the Croatian government preferred to coordinate its activity directly with Brussels, in direct coordination process with Brussels. When those 3 countries did not receive invitation to join alliance in Prague in 2002, their governments started trilateral negotiations for a mutual agreement. On 2nd May 2003, the Adriatic Charter was signed in Tirana, with participation also as a 4th country of the United States of America. The three Balkan states sent their military units in NATO mission, next NATO mission, in Afghanistan, ISAF. And Croatian officers also served in multinational teams for training Iraqi army, so-called military liaison training. In November 2006, a special committee for NATO membership was established in Zagreb under the auspices of President Stipe Mesic, and in October 2007, a large NATO exercise was launched on Croatian territory with participation of more than 9,000 servicemen from 11 NATO member states. Albania and Croatia finally received invitation during the NATO summit in Bucharest in April 2008, and next year, on 1st of April 2009, they joined the alliance. What about the government of Iran? It expected actually to receive invitation in Bucharest too. However, because of the unresolved bilateral dispute with Greece over the name, Greek representatives vetoed the decision. Perhaps most of you are well known with this name issue about Macedonia. I can give you a lot of historical data about what exactly is, because Macedonia, of course, is a geographic, first of all, historical and geographic term. And in different periods, from Hellenic period of Macedonian kings, which of course were Hellenic kings of Philip and Alexander, in the 4th century before Christ, then to Roman Empire, different areas were established as Macedonia. During the Roman Empire, Macedonia Thema was exactly Thrace, not in currently Macedonia. However, in the 18th and 19th century, during the national revival of the Balkan states, exactly the geographic Macedonia, up to the Balkan Wars to 1913, the Bucharest and London treaties, it was one geographic term. But after 1913, we can speak now about three parts of geographic Macedonia. Vardar, or Yugoslav, or Macedonia, which is now Republic of Macedonia by its constitutional name, Aegean or Greek Macedonia, and small part of Pirin or Bulgarian Macedonia. So, when we speak about Macedonia, it is not the only one used by historical reasons, but also when in 2000, you know that when in Skopje they announced their independence, the first, probably you know that the first countries, two countries that recognized the new independent republic were Bulgaria and Turkey, under its constitutional name of Republic of Macedonia. That's why we still use this name of Macedonia in our vocabulary, political vocabulary. However, by temporary reasons, in 1992, it was agreed that in UN and NATO discussions should be used temporarily the name of Fyrom, former Yugoslav. And currently it is ironically that the only country in the world that uses Yugoslavia is Macedonia, former Republic of Yugoslavia. At least I evidenced a lot of disputes between our Greeks and Macedonians colleagues with different arguments and motives, but this was exactly the only reason which impeded comfort until now the accession of Skopje to NATO. Even in the next summit in United Kingdom in early September, nobody think from the experts that this particular issue should be resolved. In June 2005, NATO Council issued a resolution for establishment of Defense Reform Group for support of defense reforms in Serbia and Montenegro. At the summit of Riga in November of 2006, NATO Council issued another resolution in support of the request of Serbia, Montenegro, and Bosnia and Herzegovina to join Partnership for Peace. In July 2008, Montenegro and Bosnia and Herzegovina received their individual PEP, Partnership for Peace Action Plan. While for Serbia, initially was acquired the procedural part process of Partnership for Peace planning. And in April 2011, it received also IPAP. The main requirements to the three Balkan states were protection of the human and minority rights, effective fight with the corruption, accomplishment of defense and security reforms, democratic control over the armed forces and arms transfer, and reaching of interoperability with NATO armed forces. In December 2009, Montenegro officially started to realize its individual map. Just a month ago, the Prime Minister of Montenegro expressed its expectation that during the next NATO summit in September 2014, the country will be invited to join NATO. However, some experts, NATO experts, argued that the issue of invitation of Montenegro should be linked in some way with the invitation of Iran. So I could say that there are no optimistic views that in September, in South there will be such kind of decision. Again, after Chicago summit in 2012, it will be postponed maybe up to 2016, the accession of Montenegro and former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. During informal meeting of NATO foreign ministers in Tallinn in April 2010, it was decided in principle, just in principle underlining, to deliver such individual map to the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, this decision was banded with certain preconditions. Actually, mainly about the democratization and stability of the political situation in the country. In fact, the three Balkan countries also signed agreement for protection of classified information as one step in this mechanism of accession to NATO. Because next case in the Southeast Europe and the Balkans. I have 15 minutes more. Thank you. Because four NATO member states, namely Greece, Romania, Spain, and Slovakia, did not recognize Kosovo independence, we still are using here Kosovo, but you know that the authorities in Pristina used Kosovo. I don't know in Europe countries how it is.
In original is Kosovo.
Kosovo.
Yes.
Yes. But here in our vocabulary we still use the historical name of Kosovo. So in the documents it is. Yes. So because these four countries did not recognize Kosovo independence in 2008, this situation affected initially the coordination of KFOR and the relationship with Kosovo authorities. During the visit of the commander of Kosovo Security Force, General Süleyman Selimi, at NATO headquarters in April 2011, he declared the desire of his government to join Partnership for Peace and NATO multinational missions. The response from Brussels was clear. Kosovo inclusion to a Partnership for Peace could be realized only when all member states recognize the new state. However, NATO foreign ministers reached a compromise with intermediate steps for support of creation of democratic multi-ethnic government in Nicosia. So what I want to tell you with this particular example is that it is not automatically, if you are a member of the European Union, you can join this system. There are some historical, political, ethnic, and other obstacles. Many experts claim that the excited problems within the Euro-Atlantic relations have functional and not institutional characteristics. And some people, I will quote just one thought by the Director of Center of International Security and Defense Policy at the RAND Corporation, James Dobbins, who cite and paraphrase JFK Kennedy thought, voicing that it is time to stop asking ourselves what NATO can do for the European Union, but to ask the question what the European Union can do for Europe. In some way, this is linked with the discussion about the share of European nations with NATO defense. Also, budgeting. You know that 2 days ago, President Obama spoke with 10 leaders of East European countries exactly on the defense budgeting progress to implement a former NATO resolution that 2% of GDP of each nation should be given to defense purposes. So this is, in general, some brief points about the long-term evolutionary process of inclusion of Eastern Europe, and particularly Southeast countries, into NATO, with using the instruments of IPA, of planning, of these procedures. What I would like also to add is that just in 5 to 10 minutes, the cooperation within the frames of training and educational cooperation of Partnership of Peace and NATO countries. Actually, I did not mention 2 countries also, which were part of the Declaration of Chicago Declaration of the Chicago Summit of 2012. There are 9 paragraphs about inclusion to new countries in NATO. There, outside, beside this, which I mentioned, including Serbia and Montenegro, there were 2 more countries which were mentioned. Article 34 and 33 and 34 mentioned Georgia, of course. Do we have a participant from Georgia here? Okay. So you can explain more than I knew even. And also a phrase about that NATO needs new democratic European-oriented Ukraine. I know that this afternoon we'll discuss especially the issue about Ukraine. Of course, many things changed in the last 10 years in this country. But the last NATO Council declaration, which was made in Chicago, continued to give open doors for next involvement. However, the first perspective was not in 2-3 years. It will be probably in 5 to 10 years in the next period. So, let me just mention about this declaration. First of all, of course, we have to mention NATO Defense College in Rome and NATO School Opera in Rome. These are the basic training and high-level centers, but because most of you are coming from foreign ministries, effective new form which appeared at the end of the 90s, and it was a consortium of Partnership for Peace Consortium of Defense Academies and Security Studies Centers. They are also organized, located, their structure in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, the George Marshall Center, but inside this institution, this initiative, there were cooperation, at least in the beginning, because I worked for 6-7 years, starting from late 90s, the activity of consortium. There were involved more than 1,500 experts of about 50 countries of Partnership for Peace, and about 400 different government and NGO organizations, think tanks, in the defense and security areas. And what I would suggest to look at some reports and some monographs which were published by different working or study groups of the consortium, especially for this area. We have at least about 30 monographs which were created by I was part of it, study group, the consortium, which was called initially Crisis Management in Southeast Europe, and later on in 2004 it was renamed to Stability and Reforms in Southeastern Europe. Such kind of working groups we have also for regional stability in Central Asia, in Southern Caucasus. They joined in 2008 into Global Black Sea Area study group. European security and defense identity, economic and legal aspects, NATO enlargement. For 5 years it was organized, such kind of working group. Also, one of the interesting things in the education level was our advanced distributed learning study group and curricular development working group. When in 2002, I remember, we reviewed the programs in security, defense, and international relations of more than 160 West European and North American universities and colleges and such kind of academic institutions, in order finally to recommend the most innovative new forms of education in security and defense. So for about 15 years, this form, in the spirit of the Partnership for Peace, gave us two basic products. First of all, expert conclusions, expert opinions, views, and second, since the late 90s and up to now, we have a lot of network of experts and researchers, scholars, and academic persons from about 45 to 50 countries in the field of security and defense. So I believe that this is one of the main leading factors to accomplish new policy of this so-called direction of NATO, science for peace and security. What we are calling in the last 5 years a comprehensive approach and using the smart policy in defense and security issues. So this is in brief what I wanted to share with you, and I'm very eager to learn your views about this process, maybe your experience and recommendations. Thank you for your attention. The floor is yours. If you want to share something. Yes,
I have just a question. I'm Iasas Aliu from Republic of Macedonia, and I want to question.
Sure.
Do you believe that as soon as possible can be solved contest between Republic of Macedonia and Republic Greece about name? And it's can be member of NATO Macedonia without change name?
Yeah. The second question, of course, is that Republic of Macedonia is currently it accomplished all of the requirements. Expect one, to have good relations and no splits with neighboring countries. And what about the name? Well, it's because for 20 years I was interested in Middle East conflict resolution. Sometimes we are very optimistic, and after half a year it was a little bit pessimistic. So probably after the elections in Skopje nowadays, there are some opportunities to restart the dialogue. And you know, of course, that there are about 3-4 different proposals, suggestions.
Yes.
But without changing the exact name, probably. Yes, sir?
Just a short question. What is the likelihood of new countries in territorial dispute like Georgia and Ukraine?
What is, sorry?
The likelihood, possibility of a country to be accepted to NATO is a territorial dispute like Ukraine and Georgia. Is it possible? Theoretically.
This afternoon you speak with my colleagues about Ukraine, and you know that what we say about Ukraine currently, let's see until the end of the year what will happen.
Yeah, Georgia, for example.
But Georgia, you know, in the last period, there were positive changes in political environment in Georgia. So the dialogue between NATO and Georgia is very active. You know that the European Union also sent its mission to Georgia.
But the sovereignty was violated. I'm saying
I believe, according to my knowledge, of course, because I'm not taking part in NATO Council discussions, but according to my knowledge, in September there will be discussion about next steps for Georgia. But you know, it will be a precedent, some way that for the first time a country outside Europe probably will go next steps to accession to NATO from different region, and this is part, you know, the wider Black Sea and wider Middle East areas are part of this, as called in expert terminology, Southern Arc of Instability, a very geostrategic region, and Georgia is part of this arc of instability. So probably this will hamper in some way the process of inclusion. Yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering why. I think it's a very important moment. You didn't mention about the bombing of Serbia by NATO, and you
I
think
just mentioned Serbia.
and you think it just was a coincidence that in the same year took place the enlargement of the NATO. If it was just a coincidence, in your opinion, or was it just the right timing?
Well, the policy of Serbia had, in the last 10 years, had different approaches because of different signals of some politicians. You know that in 2007, Serbia announced its.
Sorry, I'm asking about 1999.
Ah, you mean
The bombing of Serbia by NATO.
aerial force operation? Well, speaking about this particular question, I browsed about 20 analyses of NATO in this period, and there were mixed disputes about exactly did NATO. This was the new challenge for NATO because it was not, in fact, the direct United Nations Security Council resolution to use NATO forces. Some experts even are offering the theory that in Kosovo operation against Serbia, it started the third generation of peace support operations. The new generation, while in Afghanistan and Iraq started the fourth generation with such kind of coalition of the allied countries. So I can speak a lot about Kosovo because during this period in the spring of 1999, we browsed about 35 different online sources discussing exactly this situation, and every day it was a huge information from different point of views. So if you are looking at the official history of NATO, of course, it was under the spirit of NATO Security Council. But if you are discussing from legal point of view, it was not quite sure that it was exactly in the spirit. From legal point of view. And was it really a humanitarian operation, or it had political reasons to smash the regime of Milosevic? I don't want to give you just one and solid explanation. There are still disputes in this expert community about it. Yes, ma'am?
What is your opinion that which condition Montenegro should fulfill to be invited? And do you think that Montenegro should be connected with other countries that are expecting the invitation in belt?
I'm absolutely sure that Montenegro will be the next. it will be done in the next. The problem, as I told you, is that perhaps the case of Montenegro was linked together with the case of Macedonia. Pardon. So, like if you know in the mid last decade in 2004 till 2006, the issue of Bulgaria and Romania were linked for joining European Union in the same.
Excuse me, you are,
Yes, exactly.
but you, why said Fyron? You stay recognize us, Republic of
As
Macedonia.
Bulgarian, yes, but
Yeah.
currently we are under partnership with Greece and NATO community here.
So
Okay.
your predictions are that it's going to be connected.
I'm afraid that it should be connected. There are some information about such kind of approach to be connected.
But it wouldn't make sense for them to be connected.
Perhaps we can think that by some reasons, NATO Council and NATO authorities want to postpone for 2-3 years the next accession of the next countries of the Western Balkans. And you know, because we speak about Ukraine, in the last 2-3 months, the environment has changed a little bit, and probably some of the goals and tasks should be reconsidered in the next summit.
Then that means that the reasons are political, not, I mean, for political reasons, NATO
Geopolitical, mainly geopolitical, yes.
will not carry the next expansion.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, in mid-90s, one of the argument for invitation to Central European countries to join NATO was the dialogue established between Russia and NATO in 1994. Yes. And currently this dialogue did not exist. It was totally empty. So, do you have your own views or forecasts or your conclusions from the lessons learned of your own inclusion to NATO? Once I spoke with one of the leading US experts on this particular issue, on civil military relations in Eastern Europe and enlargement of NATO. He wrote 4 books about Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary inclusion to NATO, and then he wrote some articles about Bulgaria and Romania and about Ukraine and Jeffrey Simon, maybe know Jeff Simon. He is one of the leading experts. And once he explained to me that the process, when I asked him what are the conclusions of Central European countries inclusion to NATO, and he told me, well, it is like a running. You are going to final and then rest a little bit. So maybe when you are joining NATO, you need some 2-3 years to rest a little bit and then to continue your reforms. One of the lessons learned from our process of inclusion. Okay. Anyone? Well, thank you all for this wonderful meeting that I had with you, and I wish you all the best next 2 days in Bulgaria, with much more sun maybe. Enjoy your stay here. Thank you.
We have